Hello, everyone. Apologies for those technical difficulties. We're very grateful to have you join us today. I would like to begin with again acknowledging that we are just 13 minutes behind, inviting our speakers. We have Ruby, Oliver, Jawing, and Cindy. In that order, if you would be willing to just briefly introduce yourselves in just one or two sentences, and then we can begin the session.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Ruby Rose Lawler. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Rise, and I'm sorry if there's a lot of background noise. I'm currently at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime for the past 2 weeks, and there's no quiet part of this building, so sorry about that.
Hi everyone, my name is Oliver and I'm with the Rubik Car Fund as a project officer. See a lot of familiar faces here, so I'm excited to share this space with you all.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. My name is Jiaoying Honey Lister. I think most people would know me as Honey. I'm from the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub, so I'm calling in from Bangkok. I lead the LGBTI plus portfolio and the young key population portfolio here at the UNDP Hub, and it's delightful to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Amaiza, and I'm the National Coordinator of a youth-led organization known as Y Plus Kenya that I hope you'll also get to know in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all. It is a privilege to be sharing this space with you. Today we're speaking on organizational and network development. And so turning over to you, Ruby, Youth Rise has registered as an official organization within the last few years, which, we're acknowledging that it is quite a big step for many youth-led organizations over their lifespan. Can you tell us a bit about the challenges that you faced and any advice that you have for non-registered networks looking to take this path?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So yeah, Youth Rise has been around for like 18 years, but it's gone in and out of being registered and financially hosted by different organizations. And in 2022, well, January 2022, we finally were able to be registered in Ireland and have been registered there ever since. And we've been financially hosted by an organization in Poland for a few years before that. So it was quite a transition, and I came into the position of executive director in May 2022. And it was a very, very challenging time because we managed to get the registration in Ireland after trying in Estonia and trying to see that process along. It wasn't possible, but I wasn't part of the registering because I wasn't in this position at that point, but I was part of the kind of setting up of the organization's financial management system and restructuring and creating human resources and everything that comes with this, that comes with now managing your own resources. And so the biggest difficulty I think we faced that I experienced in this position was getting a bank account. And I think that's not something that's spoken about so much, but we've really struggled to get a bank to trust us, given that we are an organization that is led by young people who use drugs, and drugs is very much on our website, and discussing this is very much mentioned everywhere, and this is a heavily criminalized thing, heavily stigmatized topic. So it wasn't, as much as we tried to make ourselves look like trustworthy to the bank, the fact that that was in our identity made us look, I guess, dodgy to them. And so we found it really difficult. No banks in Ireland would take us. And they kept saying it would, they would give another reason, but we knew it was because of this. And then finally, we were under a lot of pressure because it was May of that year and we hadn't had access to any of our funds yet. And we had to spend within this year. And so no one being paid salaries. And so that was our kind of biggest challenge, was kind of trying to get a bank to take us in. Eventually we did. They needed an insane amount of documentation to prove, and then continuously pausing our payments. And once we did get an account, because they kept not trusting that we are an international network and our staff and our management team live all around the world and had this, so there's bank accounts that we were sending money to Nigeria, to Peru, to Argentina, to Indonesia, and this was something the banks then again flagged as, oh, another thing that they thought was not trustworthy. So I think our biggest issue was in terms of this. And one of our partner organizations, who is another network of people who use drugs, they have the same bank account as us, and they actually got shut down. And only because they made noise in the papers did they get set back up. So luckily we didn't get pushed down, but it was an incredibly difficult experience, and as well trying to figure out what financial management looks like. We had a financial officer, but to set up an entire system for this from scratch when we hadn't had one before was a lot to do really quickly, as well as running our activities and everything. So I think the biggest challenges we faced was just this pushback and not understanding from institutions like banks of the work that we do, and having to constantly explain ourselves and re-explain and get them to see us as something that's legitimate. And then also trying to set up a financial management system amongst all of this chaos, and even for me to understand what that looks like, having not come from that side of work at all. And often with youth-led organizations, where these are our first jobs, so that kind of knowledge of how to do this and experience, even if someone had studied it, it's still probably their first job. So it's very much a learning experience all round. And RCF was incredibly supportive. Amazing to see you here, Oliver. But RCF was incredibly supportive of our process of registering, and it was really highlighted in your report that year about how we managed to register and strengthen ourselves and our network as a result of the registering and the process. So really appreciate the donors that were able to support us during that time, and our partner organizations. But yeah, that was I think the main challenges that we faced. And also not having a huge amount of institutional memory, which I think has been talked about in other webinars in the past, but not having that institutional memory. As being a youth-led organization, the turnover is quite high. And so when transitions and leadership transitions happen, it can be quite difficult, and to happen in such a stressful time, it really meant that we I didn't really have the people to talk to about how did we do this 10 years ago when we were registered in the UK, for example. I had no idea who the executive director was at that time. So I think institutional memory and the nature of youth-led organizations is something else that is quite difficult. And I did my best when I came into the position to create a management structure that and a meetings and documentation structure that means that down the line, if this was, when the next transition happens, there's documentation here. But it doesn't mean that it was an easy process to do, and it really, we're a lot stronger now than we were before. And I really thank my team and donors and partners for getting to this point.
Thank you so much for sharing that experience, Ruby. I think that there's plenty of lessons learned and best practices to take away from your insight, noting that overall funding models around youth-led organizations bring with them quite a lot of barriers. Shifting over to Oliver, RCF's funding model focuses on sustainability and community leadership. How has your funding contributed to the strengthening of youth-led networks, and what lessons can we learn from this? I will also take a moment just before letting you answer that to note that participants are encouraged to use the Q&A function to pose their questions to speakers, preferably after each speaker finishes, but there will be a Q&A portion in this webinar, and so we do invite you to pose your questions in the Q&A function. Off to you, Oliver.
All right, thank you. So I'll just go over the slide deck. Can you see the slide deck? Okay, perfect. So, RCF, as some of you know, we're pooled funding mechanism, and we focus every grant cycle. We're focusing communities that are impacted by HIV, but are often left behind or with limited resources to address their needs within their communities. At RCF, we identify communities that we work with as inadequately served populations based off of this definition. And we operate a really participatory approach where we ensure that the communities that we work with drive RCF's focus. We think about ourselves playing multiple roles, but two that I would like to highlight here today are, so one, we create a space where donors and communities come together for cross-learning, but also to ensure that communities are at the center of decision-making around where the RCF funding goes. And then secondly, because we are, as I said earlier, pooled funding mechanism, a lot of the donors have different, but also extensive reporting requirements. And I think RCF plays a role in streamlining some of this reporting so that our community partners don't spend so much time dealing with reporting, but more, focusing more time on actually doing the work. And I think this is important for especially youth movements because a lot of the donor requirements can be really challenging and cumbersome for nascent organizations or even youth-led organizations that really have so much. We know that there's so much that needs to be done to ensure that young people are in the spaces where they need to be, right? So for the purpose of this presentation, I will substitute the word ISP with young people so you can get a big picture of RCF's theory of change. Right? So at RCF, we strongly believe that core funding provided to youth networks will lead to institutionally stronger youth movements globally and will improve, ensure that there's an improved and sustainable advocacy capacity of young people in these spaces. We believe over time, this would increase the influence of young people to ensure a more enabling environment for young people's health and rights. The young people will have increased access to HIV services, and that young people will be able to influence where resources go responding to the needs of young people around that, ensuring that their health and just social well-being are being protected. Overall, we think that with young people having the resources, the tools, and the influence, that there would be young people's health will be better, and that society will the social well-being will be fully represented in the society and in the response. So RCF's work is global, but we also work with regional national networks to address not just ending HIV, but other social determinants of health for young people. And in the last grant cycle, 2022 to 24, we've invested 3.1 million in youth movements globally. And I think what's really important to highlight is, because we provide long-term flexible funding, this allows the youth movements that we support to be innovative and to test out novel approaches to addressing the needs of the communities that they support. And like I think Ruby just mentioned, being a flexible funder allows young people to pivot where they need to prioritize what they consider is most important. We've seen that this has allowed a lot of youth networks to flourish, to thrive, to expand. I think we can think of so many high-level spaces where young people were not represented in, say, 10 years ago, and today they're, I think the voices of young people are heard, and they're meaningfully engaged in a lot of the decision-making when it comes to issues around their health and well-being. So overall, I think our support for you, especially in this call today, some of the youth networks globally have really thought us too, and has informed our own donors as well, as that continuing long-term flexible funding, but also ensuring that young people are at the table, are informing decision-making, will lead to achieving the long-term goals of ensuring inclusive and a healthy society for young people. And that's that for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I think that was incredible insight from your part. Again, like Ruby, so many lessons learned and best practices to be pulling from the theory of change of RCF. And so thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for your presentation. Shifting over to Jiaoying, what do you deem to be the role of agencies like UNDP in strengthening effective youth-led organizations for health and well-being? And specifically, what lessons have you learned on good practice?
Thank you so much, Sophie. Firstly, thank you so much, UNAIDS, for inviting me to today's webinar. I'll be speaking from my own perspective, having had the privilege to work with incredible youth-led organizations over the last 7+ years, and having managed the LGBTI portfolio at the UNDP Asia Pacific Hub. And I've been so lucky to have a very close working relationship with youth-led organizations and LGBTI groups, having been the UN co-chair of the Interagency Task Team on Young Key Populations from 2020 to 2023. And I see that some of our members are here in the webinar today. So thank you for joining. I know it's very late for us in Asia and the Pacific. So I really want to start by talking about something that I think many organizations strive for, but are not always successful in doing, which is meaningful engagement of youth-led organizations. And I'm sure so many of you in the room today are sick of hearing this term, meaningful engagement, because the reality is it's not always quite so. And it really is the case that meaningful engagement is pivotal, as these are the groups who face the disproportionate health risks, yet have tremendous potential to drive positive change when empowered. As you all probably know, and I'm probably speaking to the choir, but meaningful engagement requires more than just inviting youth to the table. It's about valuing the lived experiences as experts, and you are all experts when it comes to your own lives and the lives of your communities. I mean, too often engagement efforts are tokenistic and extract insights from youth without truly ceding power or compensating for their labor. And of course, this breeds mistrust and disillusionment. So I understand why there may be some negative feelings towards some of the organizations or agencies that you're working with. And that's why UNDP strives so hard to make sure that youth-led organizations are involved in every part of our decision-making and the development of interventions. And this goes all the way from concept notes, inception to delivery and beyond. Our main goal is that we don't need to exist, and that you're able to take on these initiatives and empowered to take on these initiatives in a sustainable way. Which also takes me to the second part of this, which is emphasizing the importance of not just meaningful engagement, but ethical engagement of youth-led organization. And I believe that this means proper safeguards in place when working with vulnerable and marginalized groups, and providing fair remuneration and acknowledgement of young people's time and expertise. And also recognizing the diversity within youth populations, and respecting the autonomy and expertise of this group. I've been to meetings over the last few months where I won't say the name of them, but organizations and donors have been talking about youth as if they're a homogeneous group, like there's just one group and everyone has the same issues, which of course, as we've heard from the amazing speakers just before me, Oliver and Ruby, there are so many different issues facing different key population groups, young LGBTI persons, and just marginalized and vulnerable persons. And so I'm so grateful to the youth-led organizations who have been candid in sharing their experiences with myself and UNDP, because we're actually in the development phase of a guideline for meaningful and ethical engagement and safeguarding policies for key populations in the Asia Pacific region. But we do believe that this could be used by organizations all over the globe. And we do hope when it's finished that it will be a tool that you can then share with your donors and your partners to say, look, this is what we're calling you out for your behavior, and this is what we expect if you are to engage with us. And also not just engagement, but empowering young people to lead. And UN agencies really need to create opportunities for young people to lead and actively support and empower them on their journey, and create spaces for their voices so that we can ultimately ensure equitable and inclusive future. Something that's very, very close to my heart, which I'd like to take a moment to talk about today, is really fostering innovative solutions. It's something that I've been working on with UNDP for the last 7 years. And I found that fostering innovative solutions to issues facing young people, especially when it comes to health and well-being, may well be the key to ensuring the sustainability of youth-led responses in a world where, as we all know, funding is so scarce and civic spaces are continually shrinking. So at UNDP, we are about to launch an LGBTI Youth Innovation Challenge. This is a 2-year online and offline project to foster youth-led solutions for their communities. It brings us into a new space of kind of social entrepreneurship and all this kind of lingo, which like sometimes I don't even understand, but it really is a space where there's a tremendous amount of knowledge and funding from private sector organizations. And we've actually had much success in the last few iterations in India, Thailand, China, Vietnam, and solutions have included online mental health platforms, which some people may have used in the webinar today, some telehealth solutions, and also just more traditional service provision models, all led by young people of all different backgrounds. And I really do believe that youth organizations need to be adaptable and innovative in addressing evolving health challenges and embracing new technologies and approaches and evidence-based practices so that we can respond to these emerging issues and driving positive change. Now, when it comes to the role of the UN and UNDP itself, we are continually advocating for enabling laws and policies that create a supportive environment for youth-led health and well-being initiatives. And we aim to assess gaps and contribute to the development or review of laws, policies, and regulations that are support specifically young key populations. And this goes across the board. Ruby said something that really struck me about not being able to open a bank account and registration. And this is a problem that is such a huge issue here in Asian Pacific, where very few organizations are actually able to get registered. And even if they are registered, to get foreign funding is almost impossible. And so UNDP is having to navigate that space and figure out who can be fiscal hosts, but also making sure that the fiscal hosts, how do I say this delicately, aren't abusing that situation and aren't kind of skimming off money off the top. I hope this is a safe space, but it's safeguarding that we need to make sure is put in place. And that's why it's so important that young people and the youth-led organizations themselves are telling us who they want to be working with, and that we're being responsible with how the money is being divvied out. But I'm really glad that Ruby is here to share those experiences, especially working on something as sensitive as young people who are using drugs, because we're seeing, and I don't know about other regions, but in Asia and the Pacific, the funding sources have just completely kind of evaporated. And this goes back to my work on the innovative funding sources, because yeah, it's the reality of the world. I know that I'm going on a little bit too much, so I'll just quickly touch upon also our interagency task team, which has just been an incredible partnership between the UN agencies and civil society. And it's really given us an opportunity to co-lead and have ownership over interventions and reach young key populations and young LGBTI persons. So really, it's my role to ensure that we're creating spaces where youth-led organizations genuinely lead, and also prioritizing ethical and meaningful engagement with these youth-led organizations. And I'll stop speaking for now, but I really hope there's an opportunity for Q&A and also to learn from everyone here in this room. So thank you so much. And I really hope that we can unlock the full potential of everyone for youth-led solutions for health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Joying. I think that I've taken a lot away from your contributions. So thank you for joining us and for sharing that. Shifting over to our last speaker before our Q&A portion, Cindy, I would invite you to share good practices from Spotlight Initiative and others, and how these can be scaled up, including specifically the role of different stakeholders.
Thank you very much. And just to point out is that I have really loved the conversation, especially what the previous speakers have spoken about, because that is exactly what youth-led organizations from different countries and areas face. So in regards to capacity building, and one of the good practices that we as Y+ Kenya have done is that at first we realized that even though we want to capacity build other organizations, we are also not there yet. So we also realize that not all organizations are at their optimum in terms of, or at their least in terms of their capacity building processes. So what we did is that we sought out funds for C19 for like a number of organizations that are under, who are our member organizations. So Y+ Kenya is a network of other youth-led organizations working in Kenya. So we sought out funds to support many different organizations within, many youth-led organizations within Kenya to sort of work together and build their own capacity. So in that regards, we also developed a simple OCA, so that's the organizational capacity assessment, where they were able to look through what documents do they have, what systems are there in place, what structures have they put in place to ensure that the organizations are fortified in terms of their organizational development. With that, then we were able to have a sit down and ask them, like, what are those areas that they would want to prioritize to be able to scale up their work, but also to inform their structures. And with this, we were able to then do an ODSS training, that is the Organizational Development and System Strengthening Training for all the organizations based on their specific areas that they had requested for support. So we sort of organized them into clusters, organizations that thought they are already good in like program management. We didn't do program management. We did something else as opposed to the different organizations. So we put them into clusters. We invited as many young people and as many youth leaders from the different areas, and we did that training. As an outcome of that training, they then developed a capacity building roadmap where they sat down together as a team and agreed, these are the areas that you want to see grow in the next 4 or 2 to 3 years. Yes, 2 to 3 years. And with that, we were then able to match them up with their mentors. So these are the part of the people who are doing the ODSS for them in their clusters, to follow them up and ask them if they are making those steps towards organizational development. But also more importantly, as part of the funds that we also mobilized, we also asked that they implement some of the activities themselves as opposed to us implementing, so that we would also be able to gauge the improvement that they're making. Because of course, these organizations, we have worked with them before, so we know what their capacities are in terms of implementation programs, financial reporting. So we know all that, but also what are those progresses that they're making. And they were able to implement a 5-month program together, being supported at their counties and at different levels, to just see how exactly can they then be able to scale up what they're doing, bring visibility, because some organizations are very good at doing the work but are not able to showcase it. So we also provided platforms for them to understand about communication, how to create visibility and traction towards the work that you're doing. And for us, we sort of just try to custom make it as much as possible for each organization to feel very comfortable and free to approach us and tell us that this sort of arrangement is working for us. This is what our mentors have said before, and this is where we are progressing. The mentors will tell us that this is where your organization is at this time, and based from last time, you have improved by this percentage according to a score sheet that they had made. And with that, I would say that we can see a huge, tremendous progress within those youth-led organizations that we have worked with. We are seeing that the reports are looking even better. We are seeing that more young people are actually participating in the processes of organizational development. It's just not the ED or the finance person or the programs person only taking part, but we're seeing many young people taking part in this process. How many are joining the leadership program, the leadership and governance structures? How many want to be the program associates, communication experts, all that sort of thing. So I think that was for us, that was a very huge thing. And we also saw that even the funders who gave us the funds were able to say that they can see the progress that is being made. But more importantly, they were also willing to fund us additionally. So this year, we shall be looking into developing the sort of templates for the different organizations in terms of their, what are they called? The organizational documents. So these are the strategic plans, these are the resource mobilization plans, all those documents. So we are looking at a way in which we sit down and develop templates for that, and we can make them available to any other youth-led organization who would be interested in developing such a document and making it easier for them, because we know that it's not easy, but because we are there and we're also young people, we can make it easier for you. So why not? Yes. And just on to maybe something that the partners can support us to do. I think number one is the skills, because most times we usually think that because you are a youth leader, you know everything, but there are very many components, especially when you're starting up. You know that there is need to have an admin person. They need to have administrative skills, HR. How do you recruit the right people to your team for you to function very well? How do you put all these structures in place? What are your capacity building plans? What are your community mobilization plans? How would you directly reach out to the specific community that you intend to? And how simple things like how are the reports being done? What is a good quality report? So we all need all those skills and structures and, support to just know that this is the right way to do things. Because when you know the right way, then it's easier for us to do it than if we don't know and we keep being corrected and feeling that we do not have the capacity. So I feel that is one thing that can be done. And then, of course, offering also the technical support to just enable us to know exactly how we can do things better and how we can improve. But also, I think also supporting us to develop the right documents and frameworks to just outline how we want to do things, so that when you're putting them in, when you're putting all these structures in place, they're going in tandem with our strategic plans. They're going in tandem with our frameworks that we are developing. We are saying we do not want to have a sexual exploitation. If we are saying that, what is that document that is going to say we as Y Plus Kenya do not condone sexual exploitation? So things like that are also very important for us. And then, of course, seed funding, especially for innovations. And this is particularly important because young people come up with the wildest ideas. And some of these ideas, when put on paper and even structured in a specific way, are very innovative. So just being able to say, let us try this out. Of course, you have to read the fine print and look and say, this is feasible or not. But just sitting back and saying, you know what, we might be able to try this and it might make the hugest change for these young people. It might not be traditional as to what others have done. But then again, we are continuously seeing that the numbers of HIV incidences are still rising among young people. We are still seeing that SRHR has not been achieved to the maximum for young people. So that means that the traditionals have already been done. We are saying that there's still a gap. Are we also leaving room for innovations, for testing out those pilots? Are we giving space for young people to explore and say, I think this can work? Or you can say, let us try this for 6 months. If it doesn't work, then that's fine. So also being able to just say, let us test this out. That will be very important for us. And also just linking and learning opportunities. We know that these development partners have a lot of links. They have a lot of spaces that they can connect us to. Are they connecting us? Please give us connections. Tell us that if you talk to this person, they are the right people for policy development. Help us hold our hands and tell us that this particular partner will be good for youth-led funding. We know probably your organization does not provide for youth-led funding, but for other organizations that are open to that, you can lead us to the right person to talk to, for them to be able to, for us to share our ideas, for us to share innovations, for those who can be allowing of it. And then, of course, just in general, to blow our trumpets and tell us that this is working, just telling us that this is working. We are proud of you. We are able to share the work that is continuously being done. A very good example of myself, I didn't know that what I have done and what we have achieved as Y Plus Kenya was even in the realm of possibility. But as at now, when I see all these articles being written about Cindy, even I sit back and say, I don't even know if I am the same person. That's because someone blew my trumpet. Someone said, you can do it. Someone said, yes, you're doing a good job. Someone continuously said, blew my trumpet and created visibility around the work that we are doing, so that I'm also able to do the same for the young people that we are doing this with. Yes, I think that's enough. Felt like I've talked for a period of time, and I hope that's okay.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I could not reiterate more eloquently the points that you brought forward, and I for one am very grateful. So thank you again. This concludes the speaking portion of this webinar. As we shift over to the Q&A, I've noted a few questions in the chat, but will encourage participants to continue posing their questions as they come up. My first question, I think we'll be turning to Ruby and to Cindy. What do you think, from your experience, organizations, well, how do you believe that organizations led by young key populations can effectively leverage partnerships with the private sector and government agencies for resource mobilization and policy advocacy?
Maybe I'll go first. So, sorry, I've switched to my phone now, so I hope you can still hear me. I have to run out the building, so I'll try to answer questions as I'm walking. But I think that question depends on the scope and focus of your organization. Like for national or local organizations implementing services directly, that will look different in terms of like low cost, high impact. For Youthrise, we're a global organization with members nationally doing work, but we don't fund a whole organization to do this work. It's members to be able to influence the national organizations for young people. And I think something that's really been kind of low cost, high impact for us is capacity building. Because we do capacity building online, because we're a completely remote organization, we have been something that doesn't cost so much, but is still important to think about, is to fund the internet costs for attending and to pay for the time of our members to come and attend any capacity building workshops that we do. And it is a lower cost activity than, obviously bringing people to a venue, but that's because of the nature of us being remote. So it kind of allows for this as well. But I think, we be paying for our members for the hour, 2 hour that they spend with us in the capacity building workshop for whatever it is, for a range of different topics, and paying for the internet costs to also attend is something that we have found as being kind of low cost and high impact for what they then are able to bring to their to the networks on the ground that we support and support through them. Something else that we have engaged in would be, this isn't so much low cost, but high impact would be connecting our members with delegates and UN agencies on the ground. So Youthrise is in a lot of spaces where we're in touch with UN agencies, and governments get in touch with us to advise on youth-friendly harm reduction and drug policies that put young people who use drugs at the center, and young people more generally. And so because we have these contacts, we're able to then set up and facilitate meetings with our national members and the relevant agencies in the country and government officials where we have them. And in that case, then, funding the transport to travel to the government office or to the United Nations office. So kind of this low cost side of things is more facilitating activities, more so than like implementing costs. I think facilitating engagement of our population is really important, and it shows that we value our members' time, and that we value their expertise and what they bring to the table as well. The capacity building goes both ways. Every workshop is that we're learning from them as much as they're learning from us. We're all part of the key population ourselves, so it's definitely a learning experience all around. But yeah, I think that's the best that comes to mind right now. Everything else kind of costs a little bit more money. So I was trying to think of the things that are like the smallest amounts that have had high impact. But obviously there's high impact with things that cost a little bit more too. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ruby. I might invite Cindy if you have some reflections to add, maybe in under 5 minutes, ideally. But turning over to you.
Yeah, just to maybe add on to what she has said, I would also say that also personal development in terms of also giving young people the opportunities to sit down by themselves and identify areas where they need that sort of capacity has come free for us per se, and agreeing that these are the areas maybe when you probably develop yourself a little bit better, then you also become a better leader in itself. Because we are all leaders in our capacities, but we also need those technical skills, those capacities in different areas to just be able to handle a little bit more. Because we as youth-led organizations, you'll find yourself, probably you are the admin and you're the programs as well. You are running the finance, but you're also doing the HR. So just sitting down within yourself and saying that I can expand my scope of work to also include this and be more competitive in terms of the work I do was also very good for us because people decide for themselves and they go out and seek those certifications. Something else that we have also leveraged on is the online courses on Coursera, on the UNICEF platforms. Yeah, on the UNICEF platforms, we have also been able to leverage on those areas to just build our capacities on things around research, things around prevention of sexual exploitation, yes, and many others as per the need arises. Thank you.
Sophie, could I also quickly add something to this question, if that would be okay?
Absolutely. You're
Yeah,
most
I just
welcome to.
thank you. Now, I just wanted to say that when it comes to leveraging partnerships with private sector and government agencies, go to your local UN partners and tell them to use their convening power to make those meetings happen. I mean, in the next few weeks, I'll be organizing roundtables for Youth Lead, Youth Voices Count, and YPA Asia and the Pacific to meet with the new donors in the region, and also with private sector partners, because people want to work on these issues, but they're not sure who to reach out to. I mean, I spoke to the USAID focal points here just the other day, and they didn't even know that youth-led organizations were active in Asia and the Pacific. So there's a real disconnect happening. And it's our job as UN agencies to make those connections and then support your efforts in resource mobilization and any sort of networking. So reach out to them, see what their technical capacities are. And also don't forget that a lot of UN agencies are available for support in proposal writings. I myself support proposal writing across the globe. So really utilize the fact that those agencies are there and they're there to serve. I'm talking about UNDP's mandate, but I know it's the same for UNAIDS. So yeah, those connections are available and really utilize it and see them as allies. And I need to emphasize that whilst UNDP is not a donor, they are able to connect you to donors and create those conversations. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. For Oliver, I have a question in the chat for you that I would also perhaps invite Joy to add on to following your response. But in the context of limited resources, how can organizations led by young key populations prioritize their interventions for maximum impact? Could you provide examples of low cost but high impact strategies?
Thank you, Sophie. I think there are a lot of some of the youth networks here that are partners can speak to some strategies that they've I think would consider low cost but high impact. I think but from my experience, uh, first of all, you want to think about what are the priorities right now, right? And so sometimes people tend to just go with the flow, which say, for example, a larger youth movement. But if you're like a local network, you want to think about what's more important for the constituency or the communities that you're representing at that time, and then push for ownership. Because I think once communities own a response, over time, the costs diminishes, right? Because then there's buy-in, there's responsibility. And I think that, if we invest in, those kinds of programs where there is buy-in, then over time, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But low cost, high impact really is two things. One, if communities own a response, then there's a chance that over the long term it would have high impact. It would lead to high impact, basically.
Thank you, Oliver. I'm noting in the chat that we have someone with their hand raised, so I might invite Sharaf to help and enable the microphone function.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ekanem Itoro Ifyong, and I'm the chair of the pact. And the pact is a global youth-led network working within the sexual reproductive health and HIV response. And we are currently 152 member organizations. Thanks to all the speakers, I think listening from Ruby to Anene and also to the UNDP speaker as well as the last speaker. I mean, it just shows the reality of what unregistered youth-led organizations are facing. And I have a first question. My first question goes to Ruby. You shared your experience about registering your organization, and I would just want to find out what were the basically like you transitioning from an unregistered network to a registered organization. What were the challenges? Because at the moment, the pact, we just conducted an assessment of our organizational development, and we are on the verge of registering the pact. However, we are still trying to, navigate how to do this. Are we going to reach out to consultants, the cost, and all that? I mean, what were those challenges in terms of you transitioning from an unregistered network to a registered organization? Was there any change in terms of the structure of the network? I would like to also find out. Then to the next speaker from UNDP. I think I mean you nailed it. I mean, in as much as we understand that over time, unregistered organizations like the pact, some of the things we face is we oftentimes do not have the opportunity to apply for large grants, and this is because some of the criteria doesn't work for an unregistered network. I can recall last year we secured 2 grants, but at the final stage we lost it because the donors realized that we were unregistered, and I mean so I mean oftentimes we see opportunities, and we can't apply because we don't fit into those criteria that is being given by the donor partners. And I mean, being an organization with over 152 member organizations, sometimes it's overwhelming when you try to engage youth-led organizations at the national level with little or no resources. We've been doing this for over 14 years. And also in terms of fiscal hosting, I'll just say it's basically skimming. I mean, because if you, as an unregistered network, you get a small grant. That small grant, if you are going to be working with a fiscal host, the fiscal host is going to take maybe 8% off that fund. 8% of that fund itself already affects the programmatic implementation of the grant itself, and also leaves the organization itself who secured the grant with little or no resources to sustain its administration. So I mean, this is not really sustainable. And I mean, I would just want to find out. You said you've been working with organizations like Asia Pacific to see how to navigate this, but I mean, what about networks at the global level, like the pact? And also to Anene, thank you very much. I mean, for that, for the presentation on the RCF. I just want to know, I know that we had discussed this initially about how the pact can actually, unregistered network like the pact, who have been working over the years to see how.
Apologies, I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay, sorry,
but
just I'll hand it here.
yes,
just
because
how can we
are going over time, we're going to have to stop
leverage?
at those 2 questions, unfortunately.
Okay,
I'm so
right,
sorry.
thank you.
Yes, so Ruby, Jong, if you have any time left on your respective ends to answer even partially, I know that these are very important questions that that do deserve to be honored. But I might encourage you to reach out to our speakers directly or even I'm sure that someone on our end could share some contact information for more information. But Ruby and Jong, if you have a moment to even just briefly introduce a response to those questions, you'd be most welcome to.
Okay, sorry, I'm now on a tram, so it's got louder. But I don't think I have anything else to share other than what I shared on that exact question at the start of the webinar. But I'm happy to follow up, as you said, if you want to take my email, ruby@youthrise.org, and I can send you what I said in written form, if that helps. And I can try get in contact with the past executive director and see if she has more about the actual registering process, because like I said, I wasn't part of the register and I was part of the bit after. So maybe that can give you a more comprehensive response via email, but I don't have anything else to add other than what I already said, and give a better response written.
Maybe I can also just share some few words for Ettore. Fantastic question. I hear exactly what you're saying about having to deal with fiscal hosts. I can of course only speak from my experience and working with a whole array of organizations at the Asia Pacific region and globally, as you've said. And this is where consortiums, and I know that YouthRise is part of a fantastic consortium, because I actually met a lot of members of YouthRise through the consortium they share with Youth Lead a few years ago. But this is where consortiums and group networks are so important, because you are finding fiscal hosts that you kind of trust and believe in. And an example is we're giving money to the Thailand AIDS Coalition here, which isn't a registered organization. And so they've had to come into agreement as to who will be the fiscal host, which organization, and it's an organization called Swing. And of course, there's a lot of trust that has to go into that. But this is the kind of level of trust that you build over years and years and years of working together. And look, I completely understand that in some environments, it's just too hard to register. In Vietnam, for instance, CSOs have to register as businesses or social enterprises. And so I would recommend reaching out to organizations like Ruby's and everyone else in the room today to see how they did navigate those spaces. But if you really are in a position where right now you can't navigate those spaces, build those networks, build those partnerships with organizations that you trust, and that you can work with, who can submit those joint proposals for you. And again, UN agencies are there to support you. We're able to submit or ask for funding from donors on your behalf, and then act as the kind of, the word isn't fiscal host in that situation, but it's a similar situation where we'd be helping get the money into your country or region. So there are definitely different, oh, Oliver's saying there's no more time. There's definitely ways of moving around this and navigating the space. And it's going to be harder and harder with the fact that there's just such limited funding now. And that's why it's just so important to build networks with everyone. People we hadn't thought of, whether that's GSK, pharmaceutical companies, we can't, but you can. To other private sector organizations, we've really got to broaden our horizons. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Joang. And with that, in alignment with Oliver's note, I want to take a moment to just thank all of our participants for attending this webinar, and another round of applause for our amazing speakers. Thank you all for joining us, and for the privilege of sharing your reflections and your insight with us today. So thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Sophie. I guess we're good to go.